Hello everybody, it's Jared here, head of beer at Brew Republic. I want to thank you for joining us for the 2021 Vintage Festival online. If you haven't had these beers in the refrigerator yet, please get them in now. You need to cool them down before we do a tasting and a little bit of a tour. With the exception of the Ordinary Bitter, you can leave that one out. We're going to crack it in just a minute. And you might want to think about putting the Collab beer in the freezer if it's not very cold. You want that one a little this side of room temp. So you want that pretty cold to really let the hops sing. If you're already a member of Brew Republic, we really hope you're enjoying the April cases that are currently shipping, and you can't wait for May. We have an amazing collaboration coming up with our featured brewer that you're going to love. If you haven't joined Brew Republic yet, let me tell you a little bit about us. So we only champion small independent breweries. There's no mega corporations or any big beer involved in what we do. We deliver them directly to your door. And we also have something for every taste. So 9 beer packs, big bottles for more traditional ale drinkers and occasional European lager in there. We have 3 beers that are focused on the craft drinker, a Hop Hunters, a Discovery, and a premium case. And then we have the most premium beer case in the UK, our Stout Club. This is limited to 100 members only, and you may have to get onto a waiting list right now to join, but I highly recommend it. Okay, briefly take you through the beers we're going to be tasting. First, the Ordinary Bitter. This is the one we're going to crack. In fact, you can crack it right now when we go on the brewery tour with Jules and Ed. Then Ed will be joining me for a taste of their pale ale, their flagship pale ale at that. Nice light dry malt base with very modern American hops. Then on to Ivo, which is Orbit's version of a pale ale. Very good contrast comparison here. 2 very similar ABVs, similar styles with 2 different visions on how to make it. Then on to Dead Wax Porter, fantastic beer, tasting like toast with dark jam on it. Absolutely delicious. And then the Piece de Resistance, the Vintage Collab. This beer is being tasted by all of us pretty much for the first time today. We made this for the Vintage Festival specifically to take on some of those aromas and wine notes that you'll be experiencing over the next day and a half. They should be quite familiar to you if you're having a nice Sauvignon Blanc. I think you'll pick up some similar characters here. If you have any questions about any of the beers or anything about Brew Republic, we will have Andy on the chat the entire time, so please fire away with your questions. And have a great time, and over to Jules. Cheers.
Please listen carefully.
I'm here at Anspach Hobday with Ed. Ed, tell us a bit about the brewery.
Okay, so welcome to Anspach Hobday here in Croydon. The brewery was founded 7 years ago by Jack and Paul, who are Anspach Hobday. They went to school together, then they moved to London together, started home brewing. The home brews were pretty successful. They won some awards. They started brewing in Bermondsey, and then at the beginning of last year we moved here to our new site in Croydon.
Great, and what's the difference between the site here in Croydon and the one in Bermondsey?
Well, I mean, the main difference is the size. You know, the one in Bermondsey was like lots of breweries in London, just a little railway arch. You know, we used to bottle by hand. Everything was cramped, not enough room, storing our stock off site, getting everything out of the way to be the tap room at the weekend. Whereas now here it's, you know, it's much bigger. We've got the canning line, we've got more fermenters, we can make more beer. It's freed up space in Bermondsey to have it more as a tap room during the week and at the weekend, and to do some more experimental mixed fermentation barrel aging beer. And then we've also got our site in Camberwell, the Pigeon, where we do, it's become more of a bottle shop during the pandemic, but it'll go back to being a tap room and a bottle shop.
Great.
Yeah, well, as we're here, should we go and have a look around? Right, so here we are. This is it, our newish brewery in Croydon. As you can see from your last visit, it's much bigger, all the storage. This is where all the brewing happens over here. But the most important addition with our new site is this canning line. So previously in Bermondsey, you know, we were bottling by hand. It was 3 people filling 6 at a time, capping, putting it in the box, capping, putting it in the box, pallets everywhere, it's just carnage. And it would take us a long time to do not many beers. So we always wanted to invest in our own canning line. We never wanted to do, you know, external canning where, you know, someone else could make a mistake, you know, and get it wrong. If we're going to make any mistakes, we're going to make them ourselves. So this is it, the micro can canning line.
So it must have come at a perfect time for you guys, really, just before the takeaway
yeah.
element.
So, you know, we got it like we launched the cans the week before lockdown last year. It couldn't have been better timing. We would have been in a bit of a sticky situation, I think, if we were going through the first lockdown with bottles, because the market's moved so much towards cans, as you know. So this is it. It takes 3 people to operate it still, but we can do 4 times as many cans in the time that it takes to do the equivalent amount of bottles. It's cans are just better for the beer. It purges them with CO2, so no oxygen gets in. It's all manual it's not manual, it's all automatic all the way through there. And then at the end, someone still puts them in the boxes by hand, but that allows us to sort of get that quality control of making sure all that doesn't feel quite right, and we can go back and check it's filling everything to the right level. So we can do like 5,000 cans in one run.
Wow.
Of a full batch in just sort of 5 hours.
That's great. And you're still bottling some beers?
Not here. We've decided to make the move completely to cans. We thought, some of our restaurant and hotel customers did want to stick with bottles, but hopefully I think one day they'll come round to the fact that cans are what people want now. And over in Bermondsey now we're brewing some mixed fermentation sours and barrel-aged stouts and sort of more exciting stuff and things with weird yeasts that we don't want anywhere near this.
Yeah.
And we'll be bottling those in kind of like 375 kind of like Gers Belgian sour bottles, which is going to be really exciting, but that's going to be really manual again.
Yeah.
But other than that,
and you
cans.
can can different sizes? It's not just these 440s?
Yeah, so the core range is in 440s, which you can see here, just because we think that's that's the most popular size at the moment. You get more beer. We can do it for pretty much the same price as we used to do 330ml bottles, and then for certain customers we can do smaller cans for 330s, and those are the 2 sizes we can do. We can split between, so we can, if someone comes to us and goes, we want a whole batch of this beer, we want it in 330 cans, we can do it just like that. It's really easy. So this has made not my life personally, well, I suppose in a way, but the brewer's life so much easier, and we're just way more efficient now. It's it's our baby, really.
It's brilliant, great addition.
Yeah, absolutely. But enough about that. Let's go look at the lager tanks, which are also incredibly exciting. So as you can see, these kind of weird looking tanks here, they're the wrong way around. But these are our dedicated lagering vessels. So we call them, the horizontals, which isn't very imaginative because they are. And we're one of the only breweries in the UK that we're aware of who use these dedicated tanks for making lager, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, so Jared's told me so much about these already, but why are you specifically focusing on lager and the style?
So we've been making lager for, about 3 years now, but we used to make it in just these normal upright tanks, and lager takes a lot longer to make, whereas a pale ale you can turn around in about 2 weeks. A lager you want it to take 6, 7, 8, 9, the longer the better, because of the cold conditioning processes where you get the kind of really delicate finish. And these tanks allow us to condition the beer with a wider surface area, so the yeast has further to drop out, which gives you that real lovely clarity, and there's less just pressure on top of the beer, so it's just under less pressure, it's under less stress. So when it's essentially relaxing at this cold temperature for a long time, it just allows it to sort of just drop right, really clean, really delicate, and they also look really cool, and we can stack them. And we're going to be serving lager fresh from the tank to the bar in the tap room at the weekend, which is going to be, I think, a really nice feature, because there's nothing better than drinking really cold lager fresh from the tank. So that's what, they're sort of it's the other, with the canning line, they're the 2 really unique and exciting things about the new site. We love lager and we want to take it really seriously. So that's enough about those. Should we go and have a look at what's going on up here with the rest of the brewery? I think the guys are actually doing some brewing now. Right, so here we are in sort of, the main bit of the brewery, where we produce, everything, and especially the things that aren't lagers in these fermenters.
Oh, why do you have 2 different sizes of fermenter?
So these singles are the ones from the old site. So we do some more specials, more experimental things. If someone just wants 1,000 litres of one beer, we can turn it around pretty quickly in these. And then the big sort of fatter ones at the back are where we do our pales, IPAs, that sort of stuff, the bitter stuff we want to do in big 50-litre kegs like this for our sort of core customers. And if you come down here, this is where the beer is actually made in the brew house, which will hopefully be getting another upgrade at some point this year. With Dan and Gabe over there brewing today.
And do these guys brew in both sites?
Yeah, so the stuff in Bermondsey is obviously quite new. That's mainly Dan and Paul will go over there and sort of keep tracking those beers, because they're a bit more organic. It's sort of when they're ready, you need to leave them to it, and then when it comes to the bottling, they'll take some guys over there, package it all up, and then bring it back here for labelling. But I leave them to organise how all this works. But it's it's a close-knit team. Lots of people have been working here for years, and it's it's just a really nice place to be. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's great. Thank you so much for showing
my
us
pleasure.
around. Really appreciate it. Now we'll go back over to Jared for a beer tasting.
Hello everybody and welcome back. I'm with Ed from Anspach Hobday, who you might recognize from his brewery tour with Jules a few minutes ago. And today we're trying the Pale, Anspach's flagship beer.
Right, so here we go. This is the Pale Ale, which, like all our beers, is very literally named. As you can imagine, it's sort of our biggest selling beer because, Pale Ale is like a kind of mainstay of, modern drinking. This is 4.4%. It takes its, inspiration from beers of the American West Coast as well as classic English pales, the straw golden colour of classic English beers with Citra Mosaic and Simcoe, which are sort of classic American hops. We've tweaked it over the last 6 years to kind of, get to a point where we're happiest with it and the hops are in keeping with people's taste at the time. So, it's dry, it's bitter, it's hoppy. You get a big kind of, tropical aromas on the nose, but then that kind of clean, bitter finish makes you want to drink more and more and more, which is why we do it in keg, we do it in can, we do it in cask.
Yeah.
So whether you're just, filling your fridge or it's your go-to pint down the local, I think it's a really good, everyday drinking beer.
Yeah, it works for everything. I think I was telling you earlier that this is, if you look at my refrigerator, I only have a few pale ales that are my staples, that are my everydays. The Pale is always the one. And I know when you have a name like that, the Pale Ale, you don't want to make too many changes, but in the modern industry, you can't quite help tweaking it here and there whenever you think you can make it better. And this is one of the best versions I've had. It's absolutely fantastic. Happy to, a classic drinker would be very, very happy with this beer, but gives some kind of that modern hop character you were talking about, which is really, really nice to kind of get them on a slippery slope into the craft beer world, but it's still going to make just an everyday beer drinker really happy. Welcome back, everybody. Now I'm with Orbit Beers. Sarah, head of sales. Paul, head of brewing. Can you tell me a little bit about how Orbit started?
Yeah, sure. So Orbit Beers was founded by Robert Middleton. He took a camper van, called it Brian, and went all the way through Scotland and the Outer Hebrides, went to every single brewery, and decided, right, I want to start a brewery, and I want to have music at the core. Hence the logo, which is a spindle adapter. So that was because his sister used to collect 7-inch records, and that was his earliest memory. It's called Orbit because he couldn't pronounce his name when he was younger. And yeah, we've come a long way. So we're 7 years this July.
Wow.
And yeah, it's
Time flies.
time flies. And we brew kind of a modern take on more European brewing styles as our core range of beers. We've also. Are we going on to this one? Or are we just talking about the whole range? Talking about the whole range.
Yeah, talk about the whole range.
So we kind of like have our feet in the European brewing styles, but we kind of do a modern take with an eye for finesse and drinkability and balance.
That's what I've always thought with your beers. When we talk about the collab, which we'll all be tasting later, I always thought Orbit had a very firm step in continental European style beers, and I even wrote in a blog post recently that I had your alt beer, and it gave me a free trip to Dusseldorf during all this time down. It was a fantastic beer. So what's your idea, Paul? And I mean, this is your core pale ale. We just had Anspach's. What's your idea of the perfect pale ale?
Well, it's quite interesting you say that, Joe, because like the focus of like a lot of our beers is that sort of like continental, like European kind of thing, and then kind of adding like a bit of a modern sort of slant to it, maybe with a bit of a twist with like kind of different ingredients and stuff. And Ivo, our pale ale, is like completely not a good example of that because it is us like making
You need an outlier, yeah.
It's the one beer that we do that's influenced more by like the kind of modern American craft beer kind of brewing rather than the sort of European styles. So yeah, I've basically gone for that. That West Coast like American kind of style when you get like big like pungent kind of hops, a lot of citrus, kind of grapefruit, what I would call a robust, maybe even aggressive bitterness,
Which is missing in a lot of beer right now. Isn't
Yeah.
it?
So, but then it's still got like quite a soft kind of oaty sort of body to it as well. Yeah. So I mean, I'm not a massive fan of like the more sort of recent kind of style of IPAs when they're extremely heavily hopped with like the big juicy kind of hops, and they can taste really sweet and sort of almost overly kind of fruity. I like things that have got a little bit of a piney, citrusy kind of
Exactly.
kick.
And they're kind of fun in a thimbleful sometimes, but I can't imagine having more than a couple with your mates in the garden with something like this.
Yeah.
You don't even realize, similar to how many years you've been brewing. You don't realize, like, I've had 5 Ivos.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, everybody, this one's in your case. Fantastic beer. Compare it to the Pale. It's a really, really good comparison.
I was just going to say, it's named after Ivo Watts Russell, who was the founder of 4AD Records, which is one of our favourite independent record labels.
That's where the
Fun
name
fact.
comes from.
Okay, now we're on to Orbit Dead Wax, their London Porter. Sarah, going to give us a bit of a rinse on these?
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. One of the more controversial styles, it always seems, which always confuses me. I love a good
Controversial?
porter. Well, I don't like dark beer. Is the thing I always hear, and I go, well, what dark beers have you had? And usually it's just one name. And dark beers can really, really change quite a bit. This is a really good example. Let you guys pour yours
cheers.
there. Something I noticed, I just had this the other day at home as well, and a lot of people think they're dark and heavy and black. Oh, sorry. But if you actually hold this up to the light, it's pretty much garnet and ruby. It's really not black at all, is it?
Yeah, no, not at all. In fact, I would say it's a mahogany ruby kind of color, almost like a
Faux mahogany.
like a really nice wardrobe, like a piece of furniture.
Yeah, I want to smoke a cigar when I look at that color. That's kind of how I feel.
That's a nice one.
Yeah, the first thing that I thought about when I tried it the other day is not all of the dark chocolate roasted things people talk about. It was almost like I overburnt toast, just that much.
Yeah.
And then I put a nice dark jam on it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's it. Almost like a Munich Dunkel with an ale yeast in a way. And I just thought it was brilliant and perfectly balanced.
Well, that's thanks. That's something you say when you say like controversy as well. Like there's always this kind of recurring, not argument, but almost like discussion amongst a lot of beer people about, well, what is the difference between like a porter and a stout?
Yeah.
And I think that's, you kind of hit it there. Like a stout like leans heavy into like the really rich like coffee, chocolate, like big like sort of flavors like that. Whereas a porter is more, it hasn't got those really over the top kind of sort of luxurious like sort of chocolate coffee kind of things. Yeah, it's more staying away from the roastiness and more like a toastiness kind of instead.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And
it's actually
that's,
quite refreshing, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
it's very drinkable.
Yeah, you don't always
know
think
what
about that with a darker beer. Sometimes you
Yeah.
think of
Yeah.
it, but I mean, you can actually put that away and be quite refreshing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think not a lot of breweries have a London Porter in their core range, which is quite an unusual thing, quite a brave thing to do. And it's named as well after the runoff area on a vinyl record.
Right. Yeah.
But I really love this beer. I think it's absolutely fantastic. And I'm quite proud that we have got it in our core range. It harks back to kind of London Porters from the kind of 18th, 19th century.
Yeah, that's where the
With that-
recipe kind of comes
Yeah,
from.
with
from
brown
that,
malt. And you really do get that treacle element as well. I
Absolutely.
find.
Yeah, it's funny. Brown malt. When I used to homebrew in the U.S., brown malt was one of those things that we didn't really get. We didn't have it. We had to research what it was, and that was just something that was inherent in all old porters.
Yeah. I mean, that's where the recipe. It's inspired. I'll let you into a little secret. It's basically my inspired homage or rip-off of the Colonel Export Porter.
Okay.
I do. I love that beer, which I think's made from some old recipe from like 1860 or something like that. So I sort of did a bit of research and got a similar kind of thing going on. And yeah, it's basically in those days they didn't have access to pale kind of malts. So all the malts were darker, so they'd be using like brown malts and amber malts as like the whole malt bill. So that's what yeah, you're right. It's brown malt and amber malt in there, giving it like most of the kind of flavour.
Yeah, tons of malt complexity, isn't it?
And I think, did you use a Nottingham ale yeast in it?
Yeah, it's an old ale strain from a sort of Nottingham brewery. It's called quintessentially. Is that the word?
Quintessentially.
That's the
British.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, but I like it because it's kind of rough. It's not like a lot of the more American kind of yeast strains are have quite a clean, neutral flavour.
Yeah.
And this has got, that's just roughness to it. And beers in those days, like this, a London Porter, people would have drunk it all the time, and it would have tasted pretty rough, like because it would have been in like stored in like kind of oak barrels and stuff,
Exactly.
like a bit of oxidation,
Get
a
a
bit
little
of like
Brett character maybe coming into there. And
So we've actually got in one of those barrels, I think, right behind you. There's a 400 litres of this sitting in there that I'm going to pitch some Brett into
Fantastic.
next week. So we're going to get a bit more of that kind of old character.
Yeah, I mean, I think what happened after time is they started making pale malts, right? Then they were like, well, let's just put almost all pale malts in there, and then super black patent and dark malt to get that color. But then you lose all that kind of mid palate, nice, sweet, fruity. I mean, something like this. I mean, if you're thinking stouts are Guinness or I mean, stouts and porters are that way. Have something like this. It's dark, it's fruity, it's warming, but it's actually a really great shoulder season, but a spring or a fall beer. It works perfectly. It's fantastic. Thanks for sharing it with me.
Cheers. Yeah.
Cheers, guys.
Fan of it. Nice.
Okay, and now on to the three-way collab between Orbit, Anspach Hobday, Brew Republic, the Vintage Festival Collab 2021. So what we were trying to do with this beer in the spirit of the Vintage Festival, which is primarily a wine-focused event, is show you what beer can do and how it can stretch and the kind of flavors that it can have. So we purposely tried to bring a lot of vinous type character to it, especially through the hop selection. We used Nelson Sauv and Hallertau Blanc, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was almost like the sort of like starting point, wasn't it, for the conversation about what kind of beer we were going to make. It's like, how do we bring those kind of flavours that might be more recognisable, maybe approachable for people that are kind of more into wine and kind of beer, and like how do we go about kind of replicating them and getting them to appear like in a beer. And we ended up with this.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of discussion at the beginning about whether we do, a saison or a sort of more classic like sour beer. And I think we wanted to sort of bring it down with a more sort of neutral yeast, but keep sort of the tartness of a goza. So there's a little bit of lactobacillus in it, but much less than we use in the sour beer. Neutral yeast, and then these kind of hops with kind of gooseberry wine characteristics to make it, I think, appeal to your craft beer drinkers, but then to sort of accessible touch points for people who only really engage with wine, I think.
Absolutely. I think a lot of everybody during the festival are going to be using a lot of this terminology, gooseberry and white grape, and the acidity in this beer. We brought, as you said, with the lactic acid, the lactobacillus rather, again, they're bringing the pH level down. So you're just making it a little bit more tart, a little more acidic, which adds to the drinkability and kind of brightens those grape.
Which you're getting loads of those kind of grapey kind of aromas off the nose. That's coming, I think, mainly from the Nelson Sauvin hop, which is like a New Zealand variety, and it's real sort of unique kind of hop. There's not really any other hop like in the world where you use that. It's got such a unique character of like, that's why it's called that, because it does smell like a Sauvignon Blanc, basically.
Exactly.
And then balance with the Hallertau Blanc, which kind of brings in like a similar kind of note. It's lovely.
And I think in the way that both breweries we've mentioned is we're all about clean finish, balance, and being really easy drinking. It's a lovely beer to have in the sun before you go into drinking your wine, and as spring is upon us, it's lovely. Yeah.
This one calls for the sun for sure. It's a little clearer outside. Fantastic beer. And these are the two partners I thought would be best to bring this kind of beer to us. I mean, we've touched on all the hallmarks of both breweries, kind of the way they brew, the styles that they make, kind of how they see beer and how it's supposed to taste. And I just thought that both of those mindsets would come together on this beer perfectly. And I must say, it's right on the nose. It's right what we wanted to do, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It is what we meant to do, like bringing that kind of winey kind of character into it. Yeah, I'm super happy with it. I would love to share a pint of this outside in the beer garden with you guys at some point.
Yeah, one thing in beer is we have to write the descriptions before the beer's finished typically. So it's not quite as easy as the wine world when you can sit on it for a few months after it's been in the barrel. So I think we're very good prognosticators with that description. So to everybody who joined us for the Vintage Festival virtually this year, I want to thank Orbit Beers, Anspach Hobday, a successful collaboration. Enjoy your weekend, enjoy the rest of the Vintage Festival, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for watching, and we hope you're enjoying this year's Vintage Festival. Here at Brew Republic, we aim to bring the tap room to your front room. So have a watch of the following video and see how we've used beer to bring people together in these tough times.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I'm Jenny. Nice to meet you.
Hi everyone. Have we opened them yet?
Hi guys, I'm Tom. I'm the head brewer at Artisan Brewing. There's Jenny in the call.
Hello.
Yeah. My mum tasted it and said it smells like mango but tastes different.
Good.
This is like acidic. I love it.
Lychee and rose water.
I'm getting that too.
Yeah.
Are we all meant to be drinking this one? Because Soraya's confusing me because they're on the cans already.